How's everyone doing? We're having a wonderful afternoon. Thanks so much, Family Research Council and Gil and Tony and all the others for putting on this wonderful event. I'm very happy to get to be here. I'm very happy to get to be here in particular because I was at another convention hotel, similar to this one, to give a speech, and I was on my way there, and there were going to be about 1,000 pro-lifers that were going to be there, men and women, some young people. And I was on my way, and outside of the hotel, there were 10 folks standing outside to protest. And one of them was a woman, and she was holding a sign that said, 95% of women hate Lila. So I'm hoping I have some better chances with this crowd. But it's also funny because she wasn't just saying that about me. What she was really upset about, this woman holding the sign, was what I was standing for, what we are standing for the dignity of every human person, for the protection and the respect, for the love of every human life, for our liberties, but most of all for that fundamental human right, which has to come first. Without it, all other rights are meaningless, and that's the right to life for everyone, and that's what we all stand for. You know, we hear so much today about this crisis that's happening from people who claim to be defenders of women. They're talking about how we, pro-lifers, value voters, women here, men here, are waging a war on women. You may have heard this, the war on women in the last few months. And coming here, I think, well, do I need to duck and cover? Do the women here, are we in some kind of danger because we're part of the war on women, or a war is being waged against us? The reality is, and what we know, is that there is a problem happening. There is danger. Women are facing danger today. But it's not because ladies can't get free birth control or free abortions. That's not the real war on women. The real war on women, the real violence, the real danger that is posed to so many women first starts in the womb, and I'll be talking about that more later, the fact that unborn women across the world are being discriminated against, are being killed by the millions, by the hundreds of millions. That's one war on women. But also the war on the majority of women, where more women say that we're pro-life than we're pro-choice. Pro-lifers are in the majority. And this war on our ideals, on our beliefs, on our faith, on our religious liberty, that's the real war on women that's happening today in America. You know, we're all here because we value something. We value something and we hold it very dear. And we believe in an America that protects and respects every human life. We believe in an America where the weakest and the most innocent among us should be protected, should be cared for. Mother Teresa, the humble nun from Calcutta, who always had very wonderful and wise things to say to us, she had comments about how when we stop protecting the weakest among us, when we stop valuing life, then we lose everything. And she said, in a nation where a mother can kill her own child, what is left but for you and for I to kill one another? Mother Teresa is saying that fundamental bond, that place where we should be the safest and the most cared for, the family, that sanctuary, that building block of civilizations, the family. When the family is under threat and when family members are turned in on themselves, turned against each other, how can we have a strong economy? How can we have a strong nation? How can we have strong foreign policy? We can't have strong anything if we don't have strong bonds that connect each other, strong families, love between spouses, love between mother and child, father and child. That is the foundation of our great country. But back to this war on women. I want to tell you about a victim of the war on women. It's a young woman, my age, named Tonya Reeves. She's 24 years old. You may have heard about Tonya, or maybe not. Not many people reported about her in the media. 2 months ago, Tonya found herself in a very difficult situation, and she went to a Planned Parenthood clinic to seek an abortion. Now, we should know something. We may already know this here, but Planned Parenthood is the biggest abortion chain. They kill over 300,000 children every year. They get $1 billion in their budget, over $500 million from the government. And Planned Parenthood offers over 95% of their services to pregnant women is, guess what? It's not prenatal care, it's not adoption, it's abortion. Where's the reproductive choice, the freedom in that? I don't know, but it's abortion. And so Tonya was there for a second trimester abortion, which, to be straightforward, is a D&C. It ultimately involves tearing apart that child limb from limb. And after the procedure was done, Tonya was not feeling well. She was waiting. They weren't ready to let her go home because she was actually not doing very well at all. And what ended up happening is for 5.5 hours, Tonya was bleeding internally in that abortion clinic, in that Planned Parenthood clinic. And they didn't call the ER, they didn't call the paramedics. And there's a reason for that. Planned Parenthood, as you may know, is very careful about their image. They care a lot about how they appear in the media. They spend a lot on advertisements and marketing, and they're very good at PR. And they're very good at dismantling other organizations, i.e. perhaps Komen, that they may be upset about, they may be angry about, they may be jealous of even. And this organization, this clinic, didn't want to embarrass themselves with an ambulance coming, and so they waited 5.5 hours while Tonya was hemorrhaging almost to death in their clinic. And when Tonya was looking like she was near death, finally they called the ambulance. And the ambulance took Tonya to the hospital. They didn't tell the hospital that they might want to check her uterus. She just had an abortion. Finally, they figured out, after precious minutes were lost, that she was bleeding internally, that she had a gash in her uterus, and that she was filled in her abdomen with liters of blood. And Tonya died that day. Tonya left behind her 1-year-old son, Alvin, and a grieving mother who is now suing Planned Parenthood for their negligence. But Tonya is the real face of the war on women. Women who have been lied to by powerful interests with powerful population control ideologies who are telling us women that abortion will liberate us, that abortion will solve our problems, but we know it's not true. We know the emotional threat of abortion, and we know too often, the physical threats of abortion against our own bodies as well as against our children. And Tonya is a victim. Tonya should remind us of all of it. You know, we are in the majority, but the DNC, Cecile Richards, head of Planned Parenthood, who got to speak at the DNC, our current administration refuses to acknowledge this, refuses to acknowledge even the pro-life Democrats, the pro-life women who are Democrats, who stand strong for the right to life. They refuse to acknowledge this. Instead, our current administration is pushing more and more extreme abortion agendas. Barack Obama, before he became the president, before many people even knew his name, when he was a state senator in Illinois, voted 4 times against the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. Has anyone heard about this act? My dear friend Jill Stanek, who was a nurse at Christ Hospital, saw children who survived abortions being left to die in soil utility rooms. And so she picked up a crusade to try to get legal protections for these children to ensure that they would be cared for if they survived an abortion. Instead, the hospital was practicing infanticide. And it was Barack Obama who went out of his way to vote 4 times and speak out on the floor of Congress against that bill. That's the kind of interest that we have in the White House and the extremism that we have in the White House. But it's more than just, it's beyond, it goes to infanticide, it goes against fighting against every abortion restriction, it goes towards paying for abortions at the federal level, increasing the funding for Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion provider. But it goes even beyond that. Just a few months ago, Live Action released a new investigation, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about that. But before I do, I'm going to mention that Obama went out of his way, our president went out of his way to come out against a ban on sex-selective abortion. Okay, now a lot was going on with the economic crisis and foreign policy issues and everything else, but he went out of his way to have his press secretary issue a statement that he opposed a sex-selective abortion ban that even countries like the UK and Australia has. President Obama, in a time when the war on women was supposedly being waged, went out of his way to say he refused this basic protection for unborn baby girls. And why did he do that? Why did he say that? Because Live Action had just released a new investigation showing Planned Parenthood a close interest with the White House, Planned Parenthood aiding and abetting the sex-selective abortions of little girls, often in the late term. And the background for this is Live Action has been investigating Planned Parenthood for maybe 5 years now. And every time we do an investigation, we discover something more illicit or corrupt about the organization, something more abusive about the way that they operate. And in this investigation, we wanted to see if the crisis that experts were saying was coming to the United States, the crisis in India and the crisis in China, where over 160 million baby girls, the Economist calls it the war on baby girls, was taking place in the other countries, and that it was happening here in parts of the United States. We wanted to discover if this was true and where and how it was happening. And so we went undercover, posing as women, seeking a sex-selective abortion because they didn't want a girl, because they wanted a boy. And that's another one of the lies that we face from the pro-abortion agenda. This idea that only one child or two child or children of a certain gender or children without a certain disability are valuable, are precious. And that to have more children or to have children with other problems limits our ability to love the children we may already have or to live the lives that we enjoy living. You know, my mother has 8 children. My parents have 8 children, one of 8. And it always amazed me that she treated each one of us as if we were her favorite child. And she'd say that having more kids made more love, and there was more and more love in the house the more kids there were. It was a beautiful thing, and it goes against that whole ideology that we need to limit or control love. We need to limit or control our fertility in these ways so that we can have this perfect family, this idea, this dream ultimately coming from Planned Parenthood's founder, Margaret Sanger, the eugenist vision that we need to control certain populations to make room for others or to create this perfect race. But in this investigation, we saw Planned Parenthood ultimately urging sex-selective abortions. And one woman, I'm going to show a video in just a moment, but she was the manager of an Austin clinic. And our actor sat down and said, you know, I don't want to have a girl, I want to have a boy, and what do you think? And the manager said, well, you know, it's fine, I've had 2 abortions. Any reason you want, she said. And she even told our actor that she could go on Medicaid in the state of Texas to get an ultrasound in the 2nd trimester to determine the sex. And if she found that it was a girl, once she confirmed it wasn't a boy, Planned Parenthood could schedule that abortion up through 24 weeks. And she said, come back here. We won't tell anyone, no problem, and use Medicaid to get that positive ultrasound to ensure you're going to actually be aborting a girl. The video I'm going to share with you just a few minutes of shows our team in Arizona, and it showed them in one of the few states that has a ban on sex-selective abortion, where they were actually breaking the law in order to facilitate what is often the late-term abortions of girls just because they're girls. You can cue the video now.
What's a good reason for an abortion? The latest polls say 77% of Americans and 80% of women think the sex of the baby is not a good reason. These Americans support bans on sex-selective abortions, abortions performed solely on the basis of the child's sex. Even though a huge majority of Americans support laws protecting preborn children from sex-selective abortion, only 4 states ban this most extreme form of gender discrimination. So does the multi-billion-dollar abortion industry obey these laws put in place to protect the human rights of the defenseless? Or does it ignore the majority who oppose sex discrimination and instead flagrantly break the law in pursuit of its radical abortion for any reason ideology?
Hi. I was wondering if I could talk to someone about scheduling a termination.
Okay, you need to do the informed consent first.
Could I just ask like a few questions, or
Sure, what do you want?
how long after can you get pregnant again?
2 days.
Actually, I'm trying to get pregnant.
Okay.
I just want to terminate this pregnancy
Right.
because of
But no,
the gender.
like
so.
I said, because don't tell us that. We don't want to know, because one of the things on here says,
Oh, I didn't see where.
yeah, it says that you are not doing this because of race or sex.
Oh. Oh, I initialed everything without reading.
No, that's fine. That's better, because
Okay.
there's a...
So I just shouldn't say that anymore.
Yeah, don't say that.
Wait, why?
Because state law says we cannot do a termination on somebody just because of race and gender. State law says we cannot do a termination on somebody just because of race and gender. One of the things you have to sign is the
okay.
affidavit that abortion is not being performed on the basis of sex or race.
Sex
And you
or
have
race.
to sign, you have to put your name in there and say that.
That's crazy that they're making a law that's saying that I can't terminate and decide what gender I want.
Yeah, well, they're telling us that we can't do that the doctor cannot do the procedure, just determine on sex and race. Yeah.
Okay, so I just shouldn't say it anymore.
You just have to put your name in there when and if you decide you're going to come in and have the procedure. I mean, you can tell her. She's going to tell you the same thing. Just don't let it be known. Just don't let it be known.
Oh.
That's just a sample of our findings. But the good news is that videos like this cut through the rhetoric and the lies and shows in a straightforward way what's really happening at these abortion clinics, what's really happening at the nation's largest abortion provider. You know, the last year was really bad for Planned Parenthood after we released videos showing the sexual cover-up of young girls who were sexually trafficked by Planned Parenthood, aiding and abetting, providing secret abortions and contraception. Planned Parenthood was defunded $60 million at the state level. And you know, under a new president in 2013, they better get prepared because all that federal funding, thank you, Governor Romney, has pledged to end so that the American family is no longer complicit in the abortion and the misdeeds of this organization. You know what, as we prepare for November, and I am very hopeful about November. I'm very hopeful because of all of you. I'm very hopeful because of the young people we see who are getting excited to make sure that we have a president that is going to stand up for life and stand up against organizations like Planned Parenthood. But you know, this is a time where this is a time of crisis where we really have to get out the vote. We really have to make sure that we are educating ourselves and our friends and making sure we're registered and prepared for November, because a lot is at stake this election. And so when we think about this war on women, when we think about the attacks that are coming, this partisan talk about this war on women, let's remember the women like Tonya and the women like the unborn women in the womb who are the victims of abortion, and the women like us here in this room who value our religious liberty and who value the right to life. And let's remember the women who are abuse victims, who are being taken to Planned Parenthoods, and that our abuse is just being covered up, just being aided and abetted, not being taken seriously. And I believe with my whole heart that when we get the facts out, that when we get the vote out, that when we encourage people that we can take our country back, and we can create a country that's founded and protects the right to life, I believe that we are going to see that day again soon when every life is respected and protected in this nation. And it's up to the people, like the people here in this room, to take on the call and say, we can do this together. We're under a just God, and we can prevail because He loves each life that He gives to us, each life that He creates. He loves each one of us. And so we will see great things this November, and we'll see even better things in 2013 when we start to create that country where every life is protected by love and by law. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.